Hello, students. You are welcome to session 3 of Unit 4. And in this session, we'll be looking at physics laboratory organization. My name is Patrick Ejay. So by the end of this session, you should be able to describe how items of equipment used in the physics laboratory should generally be stored, and describe how glassware should be stored in the laboratory. And finally, explain how to prevent the damage of equipment and supplies. So in the physics laboratory, one key thing that we do to ensure the safety of the various apparatus or equipment we have in the lab is the labeling of items. Now, every item in the physics laboratory should be stored in a specific place. And normally they are stored in the cupboards. So always ensure that the items are labeled and stored in cupboards. And you should clearly label each cupboard containing items. You should indicate the types of apparatus it contains and a list giving details. So for instance, you have, let's say, about 5 cupboards in your laboratory. Cupboard 1 contains rotor stand. So rotor stand 10, meter rule 12. You should do this so that once you want access to meter rules, you know specifically which cupboard you are to go to in order to get access to the material you are looking for. And the list should include quantities. So every material that is in a particular box, once you label, you must also state the number of items that are there. So let's look at this example. So this is an example on lenses. This is specifically for lenses. And so here, the lenses, we have types. We have the convex and the concave. And we know that lenses also have different focal lengths. So for instance, we have convex lens, 10 centimeter focal length, we have 8 pieces. Convex lens, 15 centimeter focal length, we have 10 pieces. Concave length, the focal length has been given, the quantity has also been given, as well as the 12 centimeter focal length concave lens. Its quantity has been given, and this will help you to know the number that you have, so that anytime you want to set up an experiment, it can also let you know the number of apparatus that you will set them up. The next thing is accessibility. And you bear witness with me that in the laboratory, some items are frequently used than others in the physics laboratory. There are some items that even in a whole year you will not use them. But there are some that every week, anytime you want to conduct an experiment, you realize that they will be of use. And so when it comes to accessibility and for easy retrieval of such items, you should store the ones that are mostly used at places where they are most accessible. And items which are mostly frequently used in the laboratory include Bunsen burners. We have the tripod stands, the rotor stands and clamps, meter rules, mirrors. These are materials that we mostly use them. And these materials must be placed in areas that accessing them becomes very easy for you, the teacher. And you should store such items near the entrance of the storeroom or close to working position in the main laboratory. Now let's look at storage of optical components. And when we talk about optical components, we are referring to the materials that are used in optics experiments or light experiments. How do we store such components like our lenses, our prisms? You know, these are glass materials, and their storage will differ from how you store a rotor stand. And so optical components include lenses, mirrors, prisms, and glass blocks. And you should store such items in dust-free areas. So always ensure that the areas these items are stored are free from dust, and their surfaces should also be protected from scratches. So they should be stored in areas where their surfaces are not easily scratched. So for instance, you can keep them in slots with each component the cardboard, or sometimes you can use the chalk box. You can just mold it in the form of a rectangular box. Then you can get smaller size boxes or shapes that has been cut in the form of the covers that you use to keep your passport size pictures. Then you keep the various lenses in them before you keep them in the bigger box that has been created. So you divide the small slots to contain all the objects. What about the hardware? So how do we store hardware? And some of the hardware items that you find in your school lab include the meter rules, the rotor stand, the clamps, the beam balance or the analytical balances, as well as the simple pendulums. And you should keep heavy items on lower shelves, but generally you should avoid high or low shelves. So items that are heavy, make sure they are on the lower ones, and the lighter ones will go up. But in the lab, our shelves should not be that high and they shouldn't be that low. And it is advisable to store spring balances and pulleys from hooks, with each object hanging from a separate hook if possible. So we know that all these materials already have hooks on them. So you can have a hook on the wall where you just hang these objects for easy identification and retrieval. Now, how do we maintain equipment in the laboratory? So some of the basic principles that are involved in the maintenance of equipment include the following. So cover large pieces of apparatus with dust cover to prevent their damage. So materials that are dust-free, materials that do not need to be in contact with dust, you must cover them with a dust cover so that at the end of the day, you are able to prevent them from getting damaged. And do not subject sensitive items such as telescopes, microscopes, and electronic equipment to high temperatures or corrosive environments. And regularly charge accumulators, especially if you are using the lead acid cells, to avoid their damage. And regularly coat steel objects with a thin smear of petroleum jelly or Vaseline to prevent corrosion. Now you know that our micrometer screw gauges, normally they are made of steel. Vernier calipers, they are made of steel. But if you don't keep them well, they will corrode. So one way of preventing corrosion is just coating them with either a petroleum jelly or a Vaseline. Now students, in this session, we learned some of the principles involved in the storage, retrieval, and maintenance of items of equipment in the physics laboratory. And as we bring the session to an end, let us have this simple take home. Why is it necessary to clearly label each cardboard in the physics laboratory? And why is it preferable that each spring balance is stored by hanging from a separate hook?